Welcome back to the Man Camp Podcast. Hope you are enjoying season 4, especially the new fun video feature we have going on. Today, we have a friend that is no stranger to the Man Camp Podcast. In fact, Skyler Smith, who is one of my best friends, whether he knows this or not, is actually one of the original founders of the Man Camp Podcast. He's one of the guys that we started talking about doing life, going on adventures before there was ever a podcast, before there was ever a gathering. And as you're going to hear in some of our stories, a lot of what we're going after, a lot of what we talk about is something that Skyler and I, we've been dreaming, talking about, and continue to go after. So, Skyler Smith, good to have you on the Man Camp Podcast. Again, this is not your first time, but it's the first time people get to see you in video.
There we go. And it's good to be back.
Good to be back. He's brushing up on his Zoom skills since the last time he was on the Man Camp Podcast. He moved to Montana. As you can see, there's a buffalo in the background just to prove it. And intentionally has not been on Zoom much, as probably is true for many of us. So thanks for making that sacrifice.
Yeah, no worries. Jump on, leave a little bit of reality behind and jump on Zoom.
There we go. Yeah. So it's no small feat, and I appreciate you taking the time. What I wanted to talk to you all about today and have Skyler on is this season 4, we're going after this theme of the pursuit. And we're going to talk about a few things with Skyler, but a lot of it actually comes out of our conversations by a fire, actually adventures that we're going after. We've got 2 more coming up this summer. In our tagline, if you hear it, you hear this phrase of living fully alive, and we talk about going after adventure and things like that. And actually, Skyler has started an organization kind of out of these conversations and journeys called Irons in the Fire, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Skyler, I want to just start because I kind of let you guys in on conversations that Skyler and I have had and continue to have around a couple of things. 1, the importance of adventure. 2, the importance of shared experience. But then 3, what comes out of those 2 things when you combine them together, specifically for a man in our relationships. So we talk about not getting isolated or actually being known, and what happens, the strength that comes into our life. And so this is something we talk about all the time. So I want you to just jump in. We're going to kind of talk about this because it's changed my life. I know it's changed your life. Our friendship, we like all friendships, started off just as acquaintances, but went really deep. And we've walked together through a lot of things, but the strength that's come actually came out of those 2 things, adventure and shared experience. So can you start off and just kind of share your thoughts around this? Because I know you have a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just an element of humanity that we kind of lose sometimes when we're not sharing experiences together, especially when it's outside or there's some challenge involved or something that requires men specifically in this conversation, but to get together and accomplish something together. And sometimes when we're just plugging away by ourselves and all the problems are internal and we're like, oh, I'm alone in these things. I'm alone in these struggles, or I'm the only one facing this right now. We start sharing experiences and sharing a little bit of vulnerability with each other and accomplishing things together. And pretty soon we're like, oh, my bro's facing this exact same challenge, or he faced it last week.
Yeah.
Like it's not some obstacle that we can't overcome. It's just part of humanity.
Yeah.
And sharing these experiences together as men, as brothers, as fathers and sons, all that stuff just helps. I think it takes all the troubles and struggles down some notches, and we just are stronger together, essentially.
Yeah.
I think, Zach, you and I just stumbled across that as we're like working together on a daily basis, and then realizing, oh, if we're out doing stuff together, we're actually much better at solving problems, much better at being just good friends, much better at listening to each other.
Yeah.
I think, the tasks at hand sometimes interrupt the relationship, which is actually when we listen to each other and hear where we're at, and then find solutions that actually work for each other, whether that's relational or just, personal, like, I'm in the mud and mire right now, how do I get out?
Yeah.
Taking some time to check out from the pace and the process of the world and share an experience with someone removes so much of that difficulty, and just love it. Just makes things better.
That's so good. For those of you that don't know, Skyler, we worked together for years at Jesus Culture, and on top of the adventures and the things that we go after. So I actually remember one of the first adventures that you and I went on. He has a van. We'll try to put a picture in or a video of. It's this souped up Ford. Is it Ecoline? I don't know, like lifted van, affectionately known as Vanaconda. It's this cool green color, and so it was like April. What's crazy is I actually, because it's I was on my phone. You know how your phone gives you like photo memories, and like actually just a week or so ago, I actually got a prompt, and it showed this picture. So we went out. It was in Northern California. There was actually snow still out on these back like national forest roads. And we took Vanaconda and just drove. We didn't know where we were going. There were like some of the roads were blocked. And so we had like a hatchet and tried to chop clear the road. It was like the coolest thing. And then we found this spot like kind of off this road that was like on the top of a mountain, just overlooking this valley. And then we're like, okay, this is cool. And we just set up camp. We brought some steaks, had a barbecue. It was like amazing. Just sat and looked at the stars and the fire and shared our hearts. This was one of the first adventures that we went on together as friends, and then that was the first of many. So I want to ask you this. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. Yep.
So it was fun.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you this question because you talked about shared experience. But when you add in the ingredient to everything you just said, which I obviously so agree with, but when you add adventure in, why is adventure important? Why does that even add to the shared experience?
Well, I think it gets us out of our daily context of life, which is things that we can control. So we get out of, like the schedule, everything that we know is going to happen, and it requires us to process things differently. And adventure to me is that. And when you start having to work, solve problems like, okay, there's a tree in the road. What are we going to do? We got a hatchet. We got two dudes. We're going to chop that sucker up, and burn it later. It just requires a different level of thinking, and it gets us out of the area of control, which opens up anything. Like anything can happen at any minute. I have another experience with another guy where we're doing something similar, and he ends up chopping the back of his hand open, and we're rushing to the emergency room.
I heard about that story.
Hey,
pause really quick. I remember as we're talking about Vanaconda, we took another trip, and again, I don't know why we do this. In the spring, there was still snow in Northern California, and Vanaconda, we're like, let's drive it across the snow. Got stuck, and we had to. I actually have video, so I'll try to add it into this if I can find it. We had to like dig the van out, push it out. No one's around, and it was awesome. Sorry, I'm having these memories as we're talking here.
The best part about that one is we were heading up a mountain. We were just like, let's just go as high as we can possibly get. So we're getting like up towards the summit of this mountain. The snow's deep and it's turned slushy, and yeah, we buried it to the axles that day.
We did. We got out though. We got out. Sorry, I cut you off though. You were talking about sometimes it doesn't go well, but in the midst of it.
Yeah, in the midst of it, you face trial, you face out of control situations, all that. And that's the things that develop us and develop our thinking, make us stronger, make us better in daily life. So I think that's the adventure piece of it. Is it actually, there's challenge that has to happen for growth to happen, right? We know that there's struggles that have to happen, and adventure is just a fun way to do that, really, in my eyes. Like, we're just gonna go out, challenge ourselves. We're going to learn something about ourselves, learn something about each other, and in that, relationship really grows and thrives.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm letting you guys in on some conversations Skyler had not too long ago. We were just talking about faith and how, as believers, if you follow Jesus, faith is something that is just a normal part of, or a normal phrase or element that we include in our Christianity and our following Jesus. But I think the thing that we often overlook is we all like the idea of faith, but we don't like actually having to have faith. So we're like, do you have faith? Yeah, I'm a believer. Of course I have faith. Like, we get tattoos, we go after all that. But we actually, when we get in these moments where faith does its best work, is when we're out of control, we don't have the answer, and faith is actually required, because faith, like it says in Hebrews, is the evidence or the substance of things not seen, the conviction of things hoped for. So it's when you're in these moments, adventure is one of those places where you get out of your own control, and you're required to have a faith that like it's going to work out. And I think this is important because Skyler and I were talking about this, that what we're talking about right now of shared experience or is stepping into adventure. I think, unfortunately, this is just, especially in Western American society and culture for men, but it's not limited to that. The natural propensity for us is to drift into comfortable, to drift into familiar, to drift into the areas of least resistance. This is why Jesus says, like, hey, don't take the broad path, the easy path. 'Cause he says, narrow is the road, like the hard road, the untaken road, the road that's the trail that you gotta, like we're talking about, take the hatchet out and make a path. That's actually the way that leads to life. And this is because in society, I think our human nature, we were created for adventure. We were created to live a life, but we have a tendency to drift towards what's comfortable, familiar, and easy. And in the short term, it feels like, oh, well, this is safe, this is good. But what we're not aware of is something inside of us slowly begins to die because we're not tested. We're not required to step out. Adventure brings risk, and you feel alive, but I think it's pretty normal if you get out of the rhythm of having that in your life, that you're like, oh, well, what's the point? That's, wisdom or, common sense says, well, I'm just going to play it safe. And actually, I think that's the beginning. Not that we were reckless and we do dumb things, but if that's your main priority, it actually leads to killing a piece of our heart that we were created to walk in, that in tension, in risk, in situations where we are out of control, where fear is faced, right in front of us. What are you going to do? And so, like, what would you say to that? Because, like, this is a huge issue, not just for men, but this is what we're talking about on the Man Camp podcast, for men, for fathers, for sons. Like, we drift towards safety, and it's killing a part of our heart.
It is. Yep. And I think it's actually removing a way to find strength as well, because these challenges in our hearts, it's how we grow. It's how we struggle through things and we get stronger, just like lifting weights, right? It takes resistance and it takes effort to grow something. I think for us as men, it's the same. It's like we get comfortable, and then even in my own mind, like there'll be 1 week goes by where I haven't done anything that feels like an accomplishment or a challenge or an adventure or something, and my whole mindset starts to shrink a little bit. I'm like, what am I doing in my life? This week is whatever. Yeah. And I can literally go out in the woods and go for a hike for 20 minutes, and all that stuff clears away.
Yeah.
I think that is, it's just that little bit of adventure, that little bit of challenge, that little bit of possibly out of control. Like, nature can kill you pretty fast. So you get out there and you can't control everything. And just that simple fact alone helps challenge us to be stronger, to be better. But not only that, it rewires our thinking of like, oh, I am capable to walk out here in the woods and walk back and be totally fine.
Yeah.
Like, I walked away from my truck 2 hours later, I walked right back to it. That's a win. That's a win, like I didn't get lost. And really simple, but at the same time, if we continue a pattern, like you're saying, we can either have a pattern of comfort, which is like zero challenge, try to make things as easy as possible for ourselves, which just leads to laziness in my thinking.
Yeah.
Or we can create patterns of challenge and adventure for ourselves, which create strength and courage and determination and fortitude, longevity. Like, that's in the mind, in the heart, in the spirit, physically, all that stuff is part of it. And I think we sometimes miss out on how the Lord created us to work in this way. Like, the Lord created the earth. The earth is full of wild, right? The wild, I love to call it just the wild, because it says it so well. It's just wild out there. You never know what's going to happen. Like, you go out and catch a set some Sunday after church, and You never know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Could be a shark. You could trip and fall on the way out there, or you could see something amazing, or you could have the best day of your life just
Yeah.
sitting on a surfboard watching the sun go down.
Yeah.
Or, anything really, sitting, having a fire lit up in the backyard and just smelling smoke and looking into the flames. Why is that so engulfing for us? Like we can just sit there and look at the flames. Because I think the Lord had a plan in all this. And part of it was there's wild inside of us, there's wild out there, and there's wild in him. And it's part of his nature. And we connect with him, which challenges us to grow and be more like him when we're outside of our own systems, when we're in his system of the wild, basically.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And so I think it's really important for us just to continue to challenge ourselves in that way. And it just creates stronger individuals.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. I know the answer, but I want these guys to hear this. Practically, how do you kind of make sure these two elements of, the shared experience and it's specifically adventure are a part of your life and is not something that drifts away? I mean, you mentioned just even going on a walk, it gets practical. What do you do, or what would you even encourage the guys that are listening? How do you get started? I mean, because you don't have to go climb a mountain. You don't have to, it's practical. It's simple.
Yeah. I think a lot in terms of barriers to entry. Like what are our barriers to entry to adventure? And all of us are going to have different barriers to entry. Like somebody may live in the city and they're like, I can't even see a tree looking out my window. Mm-hmm. And some of us, live somewhere where it's like you can't go outside without an adventure happening. But there's ways to find that and to craft that. And I think we get wrapped up in, it's too hard to figure this out, so I'm just going to settle for some substitute, which is, like one of the things I love to rag on is Instagram. Like I'm going to go look at pictures of some other dude doing something awesome, and then that's going to solve this problem in me. No, wow. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything for you except further breaking your mind, saying that you can't do this on your own, and you really can. And that's my encouragement to guys. And I'm like, just find a way, get in your car, drive, call your buddy and be like, dude, let's just go outside and watch the sun go down.
Yeah.
Like while we're standing up, instead of sitting down, like, let's just stand up and watch the sun go down.
Yeah.
It's as dumb and easy as that, but it's real.
Yeah.
It's outside of anything that man can construct. Like it's not buildings, it's not plans, it's not structures, we can't control it. Like, who knows? Last night I was outside. I sent you pictures this morning, Zach, but
yeah,
the Northern Lights, we live in Southeast Montana. Northern Lights are cranking last night. So I'm out there with my kids at midnight, sitting in the driveway, just in awe of what God is doing in nature, and they'll never be the same. They'll remember that for the rest of their lives. I think I will, for sure. So, and it challenges me, and I think that's part of the key is we like, in the sense of comfort, what you were talking about a minute ago, it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable to go out and do something. Oh, it takes a little effort to go out and do something. But yeah, everything that is valuable takes a little effort. And if you get it like, this is my mental strength, my mental fortitude on the line here as a man, I need to make this happen.
Yeah.
And then you wrap your kids in it and your friends in it. And you're like, oh, I got to be an example to them. I have to help them however I can. And not only that, the shared experience piece to me is just exponential. Like I can go out on a hike, it's great, but I can take somebody out on a hike, it's a whole different level, right? So I think just cutting out that idea of it's too far out there, or it can't be done, or it's not worth it, and just saying, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this because it's important.
Yeah.
I think about back in the day, I was a huge snowboarder, loved it to death, probably more than I should. Morning when you're like faced with it's cold outside and I'm going to go out there, drive for however long, get my boots on, get out in the cold and go snowboarding and you're looking at the watch and it's like 5 a.m. You're like, I just want to sleep. I just want to sleep. I know I love this, but I just want to sleep because it's comfortable in here.
Yeah.
Never once have I got up to the mountain and been like, oh man, I wish I would have stayed in bed. No, it's even if it's raining or like terrible weather or whatever, the adventure, it's the fun of it, but it costs a little bit to get there.
Yeah.
And like my mission is like, let's just not get stuck on the cost and a little bit of comfort to have some adventure. Like let it hurt a little bit. It's good. It's memorable. I remember last year we were out fishing with a buddy of ours, Jake Friel's a buddy of the podcast too.
Yeah, he's been on.
It was like, I don't know, 6 a.m. and it's snowing out and it's cold and it's blowing. I'm like, he's like, are we doing this? I'm like, heck yeah, we're doing this, dude. It doesn't.
Yeah, we are.
It's a little bit. I don't remember this, 2-3 sunny days of fishing after that. I remember that experience.
Yeah.
There in the cold, and we're out there for 45 minutes standing in cold water, and it's, snowing and 25 degrees outside. I won't ever forget that.
Yeah.
Memory, that experience, and what we shared together is way more valuable than a little bit of comfort that we missed out on.
One of the things, I love what you're saying when we talk about shared experience, besides the value of strength and, the actual experience brings, but what it also brings is when you bring someone else into it, there's accountability. Like that story you just shared with you and Jake, like when someone else is there, you're far less likely to give up or to not do it. And I know that's like, I say this all the time, like you're my adventure accountability friend. Like you're always the guy that's like, let's go do something, And this is the strength of like, obviously it's better when you're with someone else, but it's not just for the shared experience. It's actually to make sure you have that or you go back to it. It brings in accountability. And one of the things I do, this is like a tip. I'm like, if I know that, you get a plan to work out or whatever, we had Zach Ernst on the podcast and talked about the Pursuit workouts, which is another early morning workout. And you're going to go kill yourself. I invite other people, so I have to show up because I invited them, and it's like my own safeguard accountability. Like I know that I may turn over, hit the alarm, snooze, but if I've invited someone else in, it brings accountability. Like I can't cancel now. So it's just a practical way to do that. As we're wrapping up, I would also add, Skyler, you and I, not only like in our friendship, but we've been gathering guys on these adventures. And one of the things that we do just really practically is like we just set challenges or goals. I remember one time a couple years back, we texted a group of dudes that we had been on an adventure together, and we'd follow up and we said, hey, you have an assignment like once a week, once a month, once a year, like do these things. And they weren't hard. I mean, they were building up to, and then it was so cool. Like we're all dads. So we're like, hey, take your kids on an adventure once a month, or plan a big trip, or once a week, go on a walk or go outside. And the coolest thing is like just setting the goal. We just started on a text thread, would send pictures of what was going on. And it brought, like you said with your snowboard example, like no one was like, man, I wish I never did that. But we also had these moments where we're sharing. So I just would encourage you as we're wrapping up here, these two things, shared experience and adventure, are huge. And listen, we could come up with a million excuses, but there's no excuse. Start small, dive into this, but make sure you invite someone in. And we didn't really talk about this, but for those of us that are fathers, Skyler, you do a great job of this, and I try to do this well myself with my kids, is I'm trying to model something in my own life that I go after it, but then I invite them in. And it creates something powerful when you go on a hike together or plan an adventure or take them on a trip. Like there's these shared experiences, adventures that not only, bring health and connection, relationship, it's actually discipleship, teaching moments. One last thing that I want to talk about as we're wrapping up, Skyler, you've started an organization called Irons in the Fire that really came out of all the stuff we're talking about. You've been living this for years, decades. But this heart, you talk about fathers and sons, and really, you and I are planning a trip where we're taking kids. We're doing the same thing we've done with guys, and we're bringing our daughters on a trip, and you're doing things with sons. Can you share about Irons in the Fire? I know you're more about the experience, but I want people to hear this because the vision behind it is actually really powerful, but ties into even what we're talking about, that like this living out is good for you. It's good for me, like for us individually, but it is powerful as in our friendships, in our relationships with our kids, if we can walk this out. So can you just share really briefly about what you're doing with Irons in the Fire and kind of some of the vision that you're formalizing a bit.
I'd love to. The part of Irons in the Fire that really hits me and hit home is that we are all in this together. And the idea of Irons in the Fire is basically just like we have to share this stuff together in a very real and easy way, which is, for men, it's like, let's just acknowledge that we're all in a fire, that there's all stuff going on, we're all busy, all that sort of thing, but we can gather together and strengthen each other in a really practical way. And I think, the iron sharpens iron idea is great, but if we just look at it in a very like scriptural or spiritual way of, okay, I'm going to share a scripture with you and challenge you to be better as a Christian or whatever, I think we're actually missing out on something, which is that shared experience piece of we don't even have to talk about spiritual things or growth things or how do we organize our lives better or anything in these shared experiences. There's strength that comes. We actually get sharper just by being around each other. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love what we're talking about. It's because there's two integral parts, like you said, Zach. There's getting out of your context, and then there's that shared experience. Mm-hmm. And I think those two things just open the door for the Lord to move in our lives like crazy, which means to me, it's like things happen. The Lord can do things in your life in that context that maybe are completely different than sitting in a church service or whatever, but are what we need in that moment. Yeah. And that's just something I want to model to my kids and every guy I'm around is like, let's use every single day of life as a way to connect with the Lord and a way to make ourselves stronger and better in a healthy fashion. And to me, that out of context piece, like, let's just go do it together and figure it out. And then Zach, you'll be like, I mean, how many times has this happened? We've been doing something. You're like, oh man, I had this revelation today. I was standing out in the river and, like the Lord spoke this to me. And I'm like, whoa, that's more powerful than even if I would have felt like the Lord spoke that to me. In that I understand your context. I know who you are. Yeah. And out there, and the Lord spoke this. That moves me. That strengthens me. Yeah. And that's what Irons in the Fire is all about. Like, let's just get together, share some experiences together, and talk about what the Lord is doing in our lives. And that will make us all better. That will make us all better men, better fathers, better Christ followers, all those things, just naturally doing stuff that we're made to do.
Yeah, I love it. So keep your eyes open. It's in the early stages. It's kind of a newly formed, not just mission, but entity that Skyler is heading up, and I'm honored to be a part of that with him. But as we close today, Skyler, thank you for just taking time to do this. I want to say this to all you guys that are watching or listening, and wherever you find yourself, whatever part stood out to you, the most powerful thing, hopefully, that happens or comes out of these conversations and these episodes that you're listening to is it actually opens a doorway into action of some sort. I just want to encourage you. These two things are huge, shared experience and adventure. Like, don't do it alone. Begin to practically take steps, move towards, dream, get out of your comfort zone, invite a friend to go do something, invite your kids to go do something. But I just encourage you, invite you, challenge you that you will find and discover as you just take those practical steps, what opens up is even greater than you'll ever find by just playing it safe, going to what's comfortable and easy. And so this is our prayer. This is why we do the podcast, honestly. Is like, I mean, my favorite part is hearing stories of guys that have been encouraged or found health or purpose or strength or whatever it is by just stepping out into some of these topics that we're talking about. So I want to challenge you, encourage you, dive into this. Don't do it alone. Step into adventure. Do something practical. We say this all the time. Go on an adventure. Just see what happens. Like, don't make an excuse. Just do it. So Skyler, love you, dude. You know that. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. So appreciate you.
Yeah, likewise, Zach. Love you.
Awesome. As always, guys, we love to hear from you. So if you've got testimony stories, hey, send us some photos. DM us on Instagram or email us at mancamp@jesusculture.com. We'd love to hear stories of maybe what you're already doing or what came out of you listening to this podcast. Share it with other friends. We so appreciate you listening, being a part of the Man Camp community. Until the next episode, thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this. We love you guys. We're with you. And we'll see you next time.